You are listening to the To Stay, To Leave, To Know podcast, where I cover the most common questions running through your mind as you're considering whether to stay married and try again or part ways. I'm your host, Anna, an empowerment and mindset coach for ambitious women like you who are in a dilemma and considering divorce or separation from your long term partner. I'm here to help you filter through all of the thoughts you're having, whether and how you can save your marriage. This podcast is here to provide commentary and nuance on the most common experiences that are making you consider divorce as an option, to help you discern from the online noise and advice and bring depth to the conversations. Because when I was in that same confusing and dark space, I felt very isolated and alone. For nearly 4 years, I was stuck in a space of indecision, confused by everyone else's differing opinions, with no one to turn to guide me through it. Feeling the weight and the gravity of such decision on my own future, the future of my son, and everyone else around us. Once I started talking, I realized I was not alone. So many other women were going through very similar challenges, in silence, isolated, often out of shame or lack of trust in others. I'm here to put a stop to it and finally provide the guidance for this period I call the void. I'm here to bring clarity and be a guiding light as you're feeling torn between honoring what your heart desires and what the society expects you to do. So let's get going.
So, what happens when you're confused by all these different school of thoughts, train of thoughts, all these different perspectives that are available online? I'm going to talk about a little bit more about my personal experience with this and what helped me consolidate everything and make my decision. So, as I was going through this, on one side, we had these spiritual teachings of the divine feminine and masculine, and different types of energy. You have the teaching of this whole thing about it is only you, you can only affect yourself. It is only you that exists, and everything else is simply a mirror. Everything else is simply a reflection of you. So when you take that train of thought, when you take that and you look about your relationship, it is always, when you look at the relationship and apply it to your relationship, they always say that whatever is going on within your life, that you must look within yourself because all the answers will be within yourself. You work on yourself, you look for the patterns, you look for the energies, and then with that, things will change. Always start within, look inside, heal what needs to be healed, and then your reality will change. And in theory, and in most occasions, that works. It absolutely is. I'm not opposing that. But there are certain scenarios when that becomes kind of like it spins you into a loop, and it can spin you into a loop where you get stuck in the circle of constantly looking for faults within yourself, constantly looking for something to work on yourself and fix on yourself if your circumstances are not changing. So let's say you've been in a relationship, you've been married for 10 years, and then you start working on yourself and you think, okay, I'm going to start addressing I'm going to start addressing my traumas. I'm going to change the way that I speak. I'm going to become more feminine. But your relationship situation is not changing. So you are not getting the desired effect of what was supposed to happen if you are following the energetics. It did not happen. And then, okay, it didn't happen. Then what must be wrong with me? What else do I need to work within myself? And that was me, stuck in a constant loop, figuring out what I needed to change about myself, what I needed to fix about myself in order for my circumstances within my marriage to change. Following the energetics, I thought things will change. And when they didn't, I kept thinking, okay, maybe there's something else that I need to do. And this can be a very slippery slope because I've seen this in the coaching industry a lot. In the spiritual industry, a lot. There's always this focus on look within. And that is absolutely fair. But there has to be a certain point where we have to recognize that it is not just us contributing to these dynamics. And that as much as you have your own sovereignty and your own consciousness and your own um, energy that affects others, you cannot make others do something that they do not want to. And then on the other side, there was this, what I would say, the other extreme. I would say perhaps hyper feminist takes. And I don't talk about feminism in a negative way. I honestly don't. But it felt, at times, it felt kind of too extreme for me. There were takes that to tell you to dump your man as soon as you recognize a red flag. And there's going to be a short video. You're going to get the quote. If he does this, it's a red flag. You must leave him. If he doesn't do this or that, it means he doesn't respect you. So you have to be the independent and strong woman and do what's best for you. You must dump him. You need to choose yourself. And for me, both of these takes, on one side and on the other side, felt too too extreme, felt too singular, felt too as if they were boxing me into one or the other option. And it felt like it was boxing me into a decision that did not feel right for me. It did not feel right for me at all. And then who says that leaving your husband straight away is the best thing for you to do? Who says that the loneliness is the best thing for you to do? Because it does not take into consideration all the other aspects of your relationship. We cannot make a decision based on, oh, he did this, so it must mean that he does not respect me, so it must mean that the relationship has to end. The relationships are much more complex, that it can be summed down, like that can be uh, diluted down to one single take. We as people are much more complex. We are multidimensional, and that does not mean that if your partner does this one thing, it cancels everything out from your marriage, from your relationship. And then with time, I realized that this hyper independence, these strong standards, were just a mask for avoidance. A lot of the times, this avoidance of being vulnerable, avoidance to open yourself up, avoidance to admit that uh, you are contributing to the negative experiences in your relationship. It is masked by hyper independence and cutting people off and having strong standards. And there was very rarely any nuance to these conversations, because you cannot just apply and say XYZ means this, XYZ, or this ABC means this, and then just leave it like that. Nuance had to be applied. And for me, I was stuck in between these takes, which both felt very extreme and very too boxed in. And I was torn. On one side, if I took the stance of the strong, hyper independent woman, it felt like I was looking at the relationship without giving the consideration that A, I might be the problem, B, uh, the other person is a complex human being, and that I can't box him into and say, oh, this is what it means, that I cannot give other person the grace that they deserve, just as I would want someone else to give me grace. But on the other side, I did not want to take the full responsibility on myself either. I didn't want to say that the to myself, oh, relationship will change once I fix everything inside myself, once I mold myself in this way, once I learn how to speak more femininely, once I am more in my divine feminine. And who am I to decide whether how much do I need to be like divine in my divine feminine? I am both passionate and uh, I am everything. And I didn't want my marriage to be conditional upon how much I make myself feminine and how much I mold my language for the other person to respond better. And this is kind of like, it kept me torn for a good 2 years because I was feeling one thing on the outside, but then I was learning from the others. I was being told something completely different. And then it felt like I had to pick either one or the other, and I couldn't find the middle. What I wanted and what I thought applied was somewhere along the lines of in the middle, that both could be true, and that the conversation required more nuance than what two options were giving me. And there was one more thing that did not make sense to me in all of this conversation, which is, yes, I do believe that you always start within and you work from within and you address what's within yourself. I'm not knocking it. This takes certainly has its valid points. But when we're talking about attracting and when we're talking about universe and the bigger picture, for me, none of that applies when you are in an abusive relationship. For me, that does not apply. I know that there will be takes out there. There will be people that will be saying that somehow to in these when we get these difficult, extremely difficult circumstances, that it is for a bigger purpose. Well, for me, I cannot justify it. I cannot say that there was a bigger purpose in which I have somehow chosen this for myself. For me, there is no justification or universal law that can make me think that you have somehow chosen this to experience abuse, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, financial, that you have chosen coercion, that you have attracted the abuse, that there is this higher power, something bigger than yourself, something bigger than us. And that's why you attracted it for some bigger purpose that will be revealed to you at a later time. Yes, when you think about it, when we go through difficult experiences, it does give us certain lessons. It builds character in a way. It molds us in a way, it shapes us in a way that makes us oftentimes stronger. Yes, overcoming those experiences perhaps allowed you to create a certain growth. It shaped you, it gave you new skills, it gave you new perspectives, shaped you into who you are now. But for me, in my perspective, it does not apply in situations when there is abuse. We can say that um, we did have a role to play in it, yes, whether that was consciously or unconsciously, but I can't make myself to believe that was somehow chosen for a bigger purpose. Yes, people will say somehow unconsciously you have perhaps attracted this, uh, chosen it for yourself because for the bigger purpose that it's going to be revealed to yourself, maybe. But for me, from my perspective, it is mostly because we have unconsciously accepted this ourselves because we did not know how to deal with it. We did not know our attachment patterns. We did not know how those previous experiences and how our childhood shaped us into accepting these circumstances, how there were grounds and there were conditions in which it happened, which was a perfect breeding ground for someone as manipulative and abusive to notice in which kind of space we were in and use that as an opportunity. Was it an unconscious or subconscious choice? No, I don't believe it. Did we unconsciously attract it? To an extent, yes, by not being conscious of our patterns that make us susceptible to be with those people, but not attracted it by some universal law and some greater power that sent this to us or gave this challenge to us so that we can learn or transmute or do something. So, this is kind of what I had to unpack for myself and how it helped to me give a perspective on what was going on in my relationship and other people's relationship and how I was able to fit those situations into a perspective that felt much more empowering and had a bigger perspective of in which ways I have contributed to development of these scenarios and in which ways other people and other circumstances contributed for this to happen. And this is one of the reasons why I started doing this work, because after I have found the nuance, after I went back so many times back and forth between the two options, between figuring out whether I want to stay, whether I want to leave, whether it's my problem, whether he's the problem, well, whatever needed to happen, I was going back and forth, confused, not knowing, until I finally kind of reconciled what needed to happen, until I finally found the middle, the understanding of what was actually happening. And this is why I started doing this work. This is why I started supporting other women through this decision, because it took me years, absolute years, to figure out where to discern and to apply nuance to my situation. I kept going back and forth from one side to another. Maybe we should stay. Maybe we should get divorced. Maybe it's me that's the problem. Maybe it's him that's the problem. Maybe there's something else involved. Maybe I'm being punished. Maybe this is what the universe wants. And going back and forth, back and forth. And it took me years. And I feel like I have lost at least 2 or 3 years in this dilemma, in this void of not knowing which way to go. And I went out and I looked for solutions, but there were no solutions. I did not know who to go to. There were no courses that tell you how do you decide whether it's time to separate or not. Nobody was teaching this. I had friends, but then our friends couldn't help me because they were not in that situation. They had their own successful relationships. They did not know how to support me. And not to mention, they were emotionally involved into that. So to an extent, you they cannot give you an objective opinion because they want what's best for you. They just want you not to be in pain. And I was lucky that I had friends who listened to me cry through all of this, cry through all of the many times that I have questioned myself, where when I have questioned whether I'm making the right decision. And this is why I started doing my work, because I don't want any woman to go through what I went through. And because I recognize that there is no support for women out there that want to do that, kind of are in the same dilemma. And this is why I am inviting you, if you still have any questions about it, if you feel like your situation has so much nuance, if you feel like your judgment has been clouded by everyone else's opinions, the internet takes, the TikToks, the reels, if you feel like some things that have been out there do not apply to you and your situation, and you want to figure out the nuance and discern what is the right thing for you in this situation, then I invite you to DM me, to get in touch with me. There is an application form that you can fill out where you can apply to have a call with me, which is kind of just to see whether we are a good fit to work together, whether I can support you, and let me help you. Let me help you figure this out. So you're not spending another, I don't know how many years trying to figure this out by yourself, and where you will have an objective opinion, an objective take, someone who can tell you whether you are maybe you are the problem and you need to address certain things. Maybe you are the avoidant in the relationship, and maybe you are avoiding the closeness by trying to get independent. Maybe you're avoiding some difficult truths to accept. Or maybe he's the problem, and maybe he's not doing enough. Or maybe it's nobody's problem. But let me help you find that nuance. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. I'm sending you all the love in the world. You know where I am, and let me guide you. With love, Anna.